Sometimes it's the deep dives on stuff you think you've got figured out that kind of sneak up on you.
Yeah, totally.
And today, we're tackling communication,
Mm.
but not the surface stuff. We've all heard that. You sent over some sources that really get into the nitty-gritty, the why behind it all, and I gotta say, I'm ready to get kind of philosophical about this.
Right. It's fascinating. We all know communication's important, but these sources, they call it the glue of any relationship, any kind you can
Let's
think
get glue. See, I'm listening. But
Yeah.
we hear that everywhere, right?
Yeah.
What's the deeper meaning there when we say communication's the glue?
Well, think about it. Glue, it holds things together, right? But it's not about things being stuck frozen.
Right, right.
Good glue,
Yeah.
it lets things move a little. It's got flexibility, so things can grow, change without the whole thing just falling apart. That's what communication does for our relationships when it's done well.
I see the metaphor, yeah. But what about when the glue fails? Because, we've all been there, right? Where communication breaks down, things go off the rails, and it's like the root of the problem.
Oh, absolutely. One of the sources had this really powerful comparison. They said communication is to a relationship what oxygen is to life.
Whoa. Okay, that's intense. But I get it, right? We cannot survive without oxygen. So are they saying that without good communication, our relationships are basically dead?
Kind of, yeah. It might not be immediate, but over time, if you don't have that open and honest communication, it can really suffocate even the strongest bond. It's like slow suffocation.
That's a chilling thought. And it makes you realize how we can really damage relationships without even realizing it. Just by not truly listening, which is interesting you should say that because the sources talk a lot about the importance of listening, really listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Huge. One source called it active listening, and it's about being present, really present, not letting that voice in your head, the one that's already planning your response before they've even finished,
Oh, tell me about it.
quieting that voice
Yeah.
and really absorbing what the other person's saying.
Ugh. Sometimes my brain is like 5 steps ahead, planning solutions before I've even processed the problem. So, any advice on how to actually do that, this active listening thing?
One source suggested this trick, and it sounds a little weird, but imagine you have to repeat back everything the other person just said to you.
Yeah.
Like word for word. It forces you to really focus on their words instead of just letting your mind wander off.
That is a good trick. It's like suddenly the stakes are higher. You have to pay attention.
Exactly. And alongside active listening, the sources also really emphasize honesty and openness. Holding back your feelings, it's like keeping a pressure cooker on high, eventually.
Something's going to blow.
Yeah.
But then that's where it gets tricky, right? Because how do we balance that honesty with, being kind, respectful, not just blasting everyone with our every thought?
Yeah, it's a balance. One key, according to the sources, is being aware of when we're making assumptions.
Oh, interesting.
We jump to conclusions, right?
Right.
We assume we know what the other person's thinking or feeling.
All the time.
Instead, they encourage us to ask, to clarify.
Oh, that's so important.
So instead of, you're always late, it becomes, hey, I noticed you're running behind. Is everything okay?
Right, right. Simple change in wording, but it's night and day, the difference.
Huge. And then finally, there's practicing empathy. Really, truly stepping into the other person's shoes, which can just totally change your whole perspective.
And this is where I feel like those I statements that the sources talk about really come in.
Yes.
Instead of blaming or accusing, it's about owning your experience. Like, I feel unheard hits differently than you never listen.
Absolutely. That's a game changer because it takes the defensiveness out of the equation and it allows for actual dialogue to happen. It's that psychological shift from pointing fingers to actually focusing on what's going on for you.
Yes, it's about expressing your needs without attacking the other person. But as much as I love all these tips, we have to acknowledge this whole good communication thing, it takes work. You don't just wake up one morning and suddenly you're a communication guru. It takes time, practice, all that.
Oh, for sure. And the sources really emphasize that consistency is key. It's like building a muscle.
Right.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So it's a journey, not a destination. I love that. So to recap, really listening, being open and honest, but in a constructive way, ditching those assumptions, trying to practice empathy, and then remembering those I statements.
Exactly. And as you navigate your own relationships out there in the real world, here's a little something to think about, right? The sources talk about how we should avoid making assumptions about what other people are thinking, but how often do we actually stop and ask ourselves, am I communicating clearly? Like, really?
Oh, good point.
Yeah,
Maybe we need to hit the record button on ourselves sometimes, just see how we're actually doing in the communication department.
totally.
All right, folks, dive deep into those conversations. We will catch you next time.